to get our eggplant prepared for our baba ganoush, which is what I describe as the eggplant version of hummus. So it's a really nice creamy spread, and you can eat it with crudité or pita or just on a spoon. So it's really delicious. And it's based on vegetables, so it's a little bit of a healthier spread to have. So people always ask me about how to choose an eggplant. So you really want it to be nice and firm, and you want it to look heavy for the size it is, or feel heavy for the size it is, because that means it's full of water and it hasn't sat around and just kind of released its moisture, which means it could be kind of brown on the inside. This one is really nice and firm. It feels pretty heavy for the size it is, so I think that I've chosen a good one. Now I will say that this eggplant is a little bit on the smaller side. You want to kind of think about the size of a football for one eggplant. So if you have a smaller one like this, I would get 2 to make up for 1 eggplant. To give the eggplant a little bit more flavor than they would just have if you roasted these in the oven, I am going to fire roast them. So if you've never fire roasted something, you need to just be bold. Just do it and trust the process. So we're just putting the eggplant directly on the flames of our burner. If you do not have gas at your house, lots of times your outdoor grill will have a little burner on the side, or if you have a propane grill, you can actually do this out there. If you don't have either of those, unfortunately you won't get that kind of smoky flavor, but you can just roast these in the oven as well. Pretty high temperature, I'd say about 425 to 450. Just put them on a sheet pan, just prick it with a knife and to let the steam escape, and then just roast it in the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes until the eggplant is nice and tender. But with the flame here, I'm just going to make sure that the skin is completely blistered all the way around, and then I'm going to let that sit and let the internal heat finish cooking it on the inside. It's been about 5 to 7 minutes for my eggplant charring on the heat, and you can see it is going to look pretty charred beyond belief. And you're going to think that you've burnt it, but don't worry about that because we're going to take that skin off eventually. The fresher your eggplant is, the longer it's going to take on the burner because it has so much moisture. So I'm just going to put that into a bowl that is lined with a colander because this will release moisture as it sits. And then we're going to cover that with some plastic wrap, just like we would roast a pepper. And the heat inside of the eggplant is going to continue to cook it. Then we'll come back in later on and we're going to take off that skin and use the flesh for our dip. So I have all the flesh of my eggplant in my food processor, and now I need to get the remainder of my ingredients in there. So I'm going to use tahini. If you've never used tahini before, it's kind of like a peanut butter just made with sesame seeds. And that's going to add a nice, good, rich quality to this dish. Definitely has a little bit of fat in there, so it makes it taste really nice and creamy, even though there's no cream in there. So we need to get our garlic in there. The recipe calls for 2 cloves of garlic, and I wanted to show you there's a big discrepancy in the size of cloves of garlic. So if we have one that's this big and one that's this big, obviously we wouldn't want to use 2 of these big guys, or on the other hand, we wouldn't want to use 2 of these tiny guys here. So we want to use 2 of the actual size of garlic cloves, which is what I equate to the size of an almond. So lots of people will ask me about how big a garlic clove should be, and that's what I always tell them, should be roughly the size of an almond, because almonds don't tend to change in the size, but definitely garlic cloves do. So I'm just going to use my microplane to grate up my garlic into my food processor. And that's just going to ensure that I don't have any big chunks of garlic in my dip. Nobody wants to bite into a big old hunk of garlic at a party. So we'll just give ourselves a little extra insurance that that doesn't happen. We are going to reuse the microplane for some lemon zest. This is a pretty big lemon. As I was saying, there are definitely variations in sizes of things. So this lemon, I would probably say it's about 2 lemons. Okay, so we want a lemon to be roughly between the sizes of a golf ball and a baseball. And that's what I would say is a standard size lemon. So I always love the zest of the lemon, so I'm going to use all of this one from the nice big lemon, but I'll probably just use half of the juice because we're definitely not going to need all of that juice in there. Cut in half across the equator between North Pole, South Pole, and that exposes all the segments of your lemon and enables you to get the juice out a little bit better. I'm going to put my lemon in my squeezer, cup side up. It just makes it easier to get in to the flesh of the lemon. I'm just going to hold my hand over my bowl, make sure no seeds fall in. And then if you need extra juice, now you can flip it over, get the remainder out of the other side. Last few things I'm going to throw into my food processor before I turn it on are just some flat leaf Italian parsley. Make sure that we take the leaves off of the stems. The stems can be pretty woody and add a little bit too aggressive of a flavor. So with that one, we just want the leaves. And I'm going to start with 1 pinch of salt. We'll go back in and taste later on, see if we need any more. But we'll go ahead and give it a little bit of a head start with just 1 pinch. And now a nice good few cracks of fresh black pepper. And then let's get that lid on. We're going to whiz it up, and then I'm going to drizzle my olive oil in the top. There's a little pinhole in this cup up here, and so it lets just one stream fall down, and that helps to form that nice good emulsion between all the juices in the eggplant and obviously that lemon juice and then the oil. So we kind of equate that to a vinaigrette, and will stay nice and stabilized if we drip down very slow. If you don't have a drip hole in your food processor, you just have to pour it in very, very slowly, and that'll do the same thing. Baba Ghanouj is nice and smooth and creamy, so now it's time to taste and adjust our flavors as needed. Ooh, you can really taste that smokiness, the richness, the creaminess, but it's a little bit flat and it's a little bit lemony. So I'm going to add a little bit more salt to balance out the acidity of the lemon. And then usually I like to add just a tiny bit of sweetness. So I'm going to add, keeping with those Mediterranean flavors, just a little dash of honey. And if you like a little bit of a kick, we always throw in just a few dashes of hot sauce. That'll give it just a tiny bit of heat, but also give it a little bit of acidity to help lift all those other flavors. I tasted my Baba Ghanouj. Flavors are wonderful. They're nice and balanced. And now I'm going to put that in my bowl. So we always want to make sure and take the blade of the food processor out before we try and get the material out of the food processor. Make sure it doesn't fall out on us and definitely can be a hazard. So we can put this in a bowl. You could serve these in ramekins if you want to give individual portions, but usually this is something you would serve as what we call a meze, which is essentially the Greek version of tapas. So I'm just going to put a little extra olive oil right on top, and that gives the dip a really nice sheen, but also gives it a little bit more fat to add to the flavor and to the mouthfeel. I'm going to throw a little bit of just some sweet paprika on top, and then I have a nice bit of some flaky crunchy Malden sea salt right on top of there. And that looks so beautiful. If you want to throw a little bit of parsley on there, you can too. A few olives on top is really nice, but even this is just perfect. Great summer appetizer.